I've always enjoyed building Gundam models, or Gunpla for short. The first model I ever built was a 1/100 scale Master Grade Wing Zero custom from Gundam Wing Endless Waltz, and when I first heard about Gundam Breaker for the PlayStation 3, the idea of mixing and matching parts from different models to make a new one, a term known as kit bashing, fascinated me. Fast forward to some time after I'd finished reviewing Gundam Breaker 3 on the PlayStation 4, I was really excited to hear of another Gundam Breaker game. What more, the game was going to get an official release in the West as well as a PC port. The game was also developed and published by Bandai Namco, who only published the other games in the series. The other Gundam Breaker games were developed by Crafts and Meister, so New Gundam Breaker marks the first game in the series to be handled completely by Bandai Namco. In this game you play as a generic student named Kyosuke, though you can choose to rename him. Kyosuke is enrolled as a second-year transfer student at Gunbray High School, a school dedicated to educating the Gunpla builders and battlers of tomorrow. However, the school faces problems of its own. The student council of the school has imposed a strict might is right policy, rewarding the strong by making them stronger and punishing the weak. As a result, Gunpla builders and fighters are stuck in a no fun zone. To combat the tyranny of the school council, your character, his childhood friend as well as a member of the old student council, the class representative, and a girl quietly making gunpla under a table form Side Zero, a team dedicated to bringing fun back to Gunbray High. The game has two different sets of missions: peer missions where you and your partner gain points by completing objectives, with a main objective needing to be completed to beat the mission before time runs out, and team missions where you and two partners compete against another team for points, with the winner being the team with the most points when time runs out, or the team that completes the main mission. But is this game any good? Find out in The Good. I really liked how the story was structured in New Gundam Breaker. Once you play the first 4 scenarios to get familiar with the gameplay, the game will then split up into 3 paths, with more opening up as you complete certain scenarios. Each path follows a member of Side Zero, and while it plays through the same story, the motives and ideals of each character are slightly different, which results in different dialogue and attitudes between characters. The game has 7 character paths, and with each scenario, the character will get closer to the main character, with an ending dedicated to them upon completing their scenario. The game's story seemed a little bit more light-hearted than Gundam Breaker 3, and I felt it was a bit on the generic side of things, but nonetheless I can't help but appreciate how the story is told and structured around each character. Of course, the most fun I would have with this game is the kit bashing. In Gundam Breaker, as you partake in missions, you can obtain parts of enemy units. New Gundam Breaker adds to this by allowing you to switch out parts on the go. If your gunpla gets its head knocked off, just go and find another head on the battlefield and you can replace it and use its skill. Forgot to equip a weapon? Just find a weapon on the battlefield and use it. One of the gunpla I made in the game didn't even have any ranged weapons, so if I needed one I just had to knock a gun off an enemy suit and pick it up. If used strategically, you can essentially steal the parts off an enemy team member's gunpla and use it to strengthen your own while weakening theirs. Outside of battle, you can outfit your gunpla or buy new parts for it. Another change was the inclusion of an inner frame. While you can't hold a button down to retrieve parts that have been broken off, the inner frame enables you to still freely move around if parts get knocked off, instead of being crippled like in previous games. The inner frame also determines the specialty of your gunpla by setting its base stats. The game reportedly features all of the gunpla from the previous games, with a handful of new ones, though not all will be available at launch. Gunpla will be rolled out in updates as the developers didn't want to overwhelm players. Overwhelming aside, let's look at the more underwhelming features in The Bad. Can't say I'm a huge fan of skill setups and collecting parts in this game. In Gundam Breaker 3, for example, you could level up and upgrade parts and skills, and assign skills to your gunpla. Once those skills were mastered, you could assign them to any appropriate part. In this game, you can't level up parts, and skills are locked to parts, so no more using Bear Guy 3 to perform Shining Finger, unless you put Shining Gundam's arms onto Bear Guy 3. Gathering parts in the game have changed. In previous installments, you simply picked up parts and kept them. In New Gundam Breaker, you can only carry 5 parts at a time, and parts needed to be deposited into a container to be kept after battle. Putting the parts into the container I'm okay with, since you can receive objectives in a mission to deposit a key part, or a certain number of parts, but I can't say I'm a fan of limiting the amount of parts on hand to 5. Perhaps remove the limit on parts on hand at the cost of the greater risk of losing them if you get destroyed, or sifting through them to switch out parts, making you more vulnerable. I wasn't a huge fan of the stats available on parts. Unlike Gundam Breaker 3, in which parts had skills and abilities to affect performance, this game, the stats are set, and if you're the sort of person who likes building cool looking suits, then I have some bad news. You can have a cool looking suit at the cost of subpar stats, or build some weird monstrosity with good stats. Sometimes the parts you like aren't the most ideal for your suit's overall performance. Since you can't upgrade existing parts, there is little reason to replay missions over and over unless you're wanting to grind money up to buy parts, or hoping that a suit that you want a part from will appear for you to have a chance of getting, making the grind even more tedious than Gundam Breaker 3. If New Gundam Breaker had simply kept the skills and ability system from Gundam Breaker 3, then I would have certainly been happier. At least I got used to collecting parts and putting them in a container. The game also suffered from some performance issues. At the time of me collecting footage for this game, I was experiencing random freezes and slowdown. Initially when I first played the game, I thought it was because I was playing it on a standard PS4 that this was happening, as I didn't have access to any of my review gear when I tried out the game. But when I got home and played it on my PS4 Pro, I found that the game was behaving itself to begin with before ultimately freezing and slowing down mid-mission for a few seconds. This annoyed me to no end, and thankfully at the time of this review, this issue has been patched for the most part, though a certain scene which I won't put here as it contains spoilers continued to run very slow for me. I also noticed that you can also assign music from various Gundam series to play when you use your Gunpla. Problem is that a lot of the song titles are in Japanese and a lot of them don't play for very long either. Other than that, the game ran reasonably well for me. At least the AI in this game were more helpful than in Gundam Breaker 3. Complaints aside, that's all I really got here, so with that we'll move on to the opinion. If you're a Gundam fan like myself, you'll enjoy the general idea of this game. If you happen to be a fan of the Gundam Builder series, then this game and others in its series are right up your alley. The game's story interested me, and there's nothing better in a Gundam Breaker game than mixing parts and making new suits. Sadly, it's let down by its skill system and limited customization on parts outside of visual appeal. While I appreciate that performance issues have been mostly fixed at the time of this review, the game does have a few odd issues it needs to sort out. This wouldn't be my first go-to game in the Gundam Breaker series. If you really want to get into the games, then I would recommend you pick up Gundam Breaker 3 on the PlayStation 4. The Asian version of that game has English language support, and overall, I think Gundam Breaker 3 is the better game in terms of gameplay and gunpla customization. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give New Gundam Breaker the Zeta Zaku out of 10. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.